Yes, sir. Welcome into the Take the North podcast, along with Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune. I'm Mark Grote of The Score. Dan and I are both at Soldier Field after another baffling, heartbreaking loss for the Bears. Bears lose to the Vikings 30-27 in overtime. Yes, half of Soldier Field, which left early in this game, understandably. The Bears did force a tie late in the game, and then Cairo Santos with the field goal to tie it, but ultimately it was Parker Romo with the game-winning 29-yard field goal, sudden death style, as the Bears lose in overtime. Caleb Williams, 32 of 47, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. The TD passes were to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. Lots of big plays allowed by the defense in this game. Minnesota exploiting things. Jordan Addison, 8 catches, 162 yards, and a TD, including a 69-yard play. And we'll talk more about the defense as the day goes on. But, Dan, here we are again trying to explain this Bears loss. And I will say what is different about this one than the other two really dramatic losses is that none of us here, Dan, unless you were the only one, you're down a couple rows from me in the press box or down to the other side of me. I don't know if anybody thought the Bears were going to be able to tie this game up at any point in time.
No, I did joke, when they got the ball back down 2 scores in the fourth quarter to my colleague Colleen Kane, because she's got to file her game story right at the final buzzer. And I said, just make room here for the Hail Mary that turns the season around. And I was just joking around that the Bears were going to put together this comeback and pull it off. Alas, they weren't able to. The fact that they forced overtime was such an encouraging, energizing moment inside this building. You mentioned it. A lot of people were gone. Those who stayed were erupting. They were seeing the young quarterback with the clutch genes come to life right before their very eyes here at Soldier Field. And alas, they walk out of here again with a heartbreaking loss, their third loss during this 5-game losing skid that's come on the final play. And so, Grote, you have two things sort of playing out at once here. You have this emergence of Superman. Caleb Williams tells you that before the 2 fourth quarter drives that his new offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown, tells him to be Superman. And so he gets into the phone booth and he does his Superman act. And then you have a football team that is so clumsily coached and sloppy in big moments and makes untimely and catastrophic errors in all 3 phases throughout a football game. And you understand why the Vikings are 9-2 and the Chicago Bears are 4-7, because it's 2 different operations in terms of being ready to be at your sharpest when your sharpest is required. So I don't know what to do with it all. The juggling act of, man, Caleb was excellent. God, this is a wasted opportunity in a lost season for a team that deserves better than it's gotten, to be honest.
One of the sloppy moments, there's good for Caleb Williams, and we'll talk about that, but one of the sloppy moments was, and this was interesting to hear from Caleb Williams after the game, third quarter on that 4th and 4, we all see up in the press box, and I'm sure people watching on television, you see Cairo Santos start to come on the field, and the field goal unit as if they're going to kick a field goal. Then Caleb Williams and the offense comes back on, and apparently Caleb Williams admitted this, he heard the play call from Thomas Brown incorrectly. They had the wrong play call, and it ended up being incomplete to Keenan Allen. Yep. And he said it was the wrong play. That's not the play. Just to be clear, it was not the play that Thomas Brown wanted. Yeah. So Caleb just heard it incorrectly. That's the way I saw it, that it was just that Caleb heard it incorrectly. That's not the play anybody wanted, and everybody was a little bit baffled that was the play that was run, at least the players on the field, not us necessarily.
Well, and to be clear, Keenan Allen was actually open on the play, and Caleb missed him by a touch. And one of the reasons he missed him is because they were scrambling, and they get up to the line of scrimmage, and it's absolute chaos. And Caleb's trying to get things aligned just before the shot clock expires to get the play off, and ultimately has to rush the play and rush the throw and miss the throw, and you squander an opportunity to go score points at the start of the second half, which would have made this a closer football game. And there's a list. It's another checklist of sloppy moments and poorly coached moments where you go, what are we doing here? Like, I was walking back up to the press box with David Haugh after we went to the locker room in the postgame press conferences, and the only thing you can say in the back of your mind is this football team is like 2 or 3 competent decisions, competent execution moments away from being 7-4. And this being an entirely different season. Caleb Williams being a front runner for Rookie of the Year, for having his team in the thick of a playoff race, and instead they're 4-7 because stuff like you just mentioned, the 4th and 4 play happens all day long. And if you want to go through the bullet points of those moments of slop that cost this team a football game, we can do it, and we can spend probably 70% of this episode on it.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, and we're not going to do that. But I mean, I think the resume is filled.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to, Dan, I mean, you can fire up bullet points throughout the podcast. I have no problem with that. But I mean, even coming into this game, the Matt Eberflus question has probably been answered. Now the only question is whether he is gone in the middle of this season, like in the next few games, or if it happens after the season. I was not in there for Matt Eberflus. What was the vibe like with Flus? Was he asked questions about his job at all? Anything like that during the
No,
Flus presser?
Nothing about his job. And if we're just going to put that to rest for a few days, the Bears are in a short week here. They got to go play the Detroit Lions on Thursday. They don't have time to make massive changes and have a short week turnaround to go play the best team in football in their building on Thanksgiving Day. So that part of things can wait till Friday. Now, that said, I've said several times throughout this week that nothing should be off the table at Haugh. I'll give you a cross-reference point. 2020, the Detroit Lions under Matt Patricia, in his 3rd season on Thanksgiving Day, laid such a stinker in their home performance against the Houston Texans that they left their ownership no choice. And Matt Patricia was fired the day after Thanksgiving with one fewer victory than Matt Eberflus has at this stage of his 3rd season, the same stage, wow, right? Going into Thanksgiving Day. So if the Bears go to Detroit, and I think Adam Szynski, our producer, mentioned that they're double-digit underdogs going to Detroit to play the Lions, who are rolling right now. If they get beat by 35 points, which you and I could sit here today and say, yeah, of course that could be a possibility for this team coming off an overtime emotional gut-wrencher and having to play at 11:30 Central Time on Thursday morning, of course they could get their doors blown off on Thursday. And if they do, at what point do you start saying, man, like this can't continue like this, particularly given that these aren't just like hard luck losses. These are losses with sloppiness and coaching clumsiness that can't be forgiven. It just can't be forgiven. This is the National Football League. You're in a cutthroat league trying to play with the big boys. And what happens when you're consistently off kilter? This happens. Washington happens. Green Bay happens. Arizona happens. The Patriots happens. And here we are again, 42 days since the last time that we sat down on a podcast and covered a victory. Actually, you didn't even sit down for me that day in London with the podcast. So I don't know that you and I have actually sat down post-game and recapped the victory yet on Take the North.
That's amazing. That is frightening. One thing too that I don't want to hear from people. I'm sick of hearing from people who push back on the Flus fire when people say, "Well, who are you going to get to run the team then?" It doesn't matter at this point. This is all about. I mean, the season is over. The Bears are not going to go to the playoffs. The miracle is not happening. I mean, we've been the miracle. If it was going to happen, it should have started 2 or 3 games ago. They're in the midst of a 5-game losing streak. They are 4-7 right now at Detroit, at San Francisco, at Minnesota, home against Detroit. That's their next 4 games. So it's not happening at this point. So you could say that it doesn't matter who the coach is. It's really more than anything. It would be symbolic of change here at Haugh and at Soldier Field and wherever the Bears are, because they talk big.
Yeah, it would be an apology to your players is what it would be. It would be someone
and your fan
upper
base.
management saying, I'm sorry, we screwed this up and we have to make a change. Now, if they wait till January 6th or whatever it is, the day after the Packers game at Lambeau Field, fine, so be it. We know where we're headed with this, right? And there's just no way to justify retaining Matt Eberflus past week 18. The task now is him telling people above him that he deserves the chance to continue leading this team through the finish line. And this gets to be, look, like we've done this before. We've done it with John Fox. We've done it with Matt Nagy. To some extent we did it with Mark Trestman. And there's just a point where like we're there. Like we know what the end result of this is. And now we've still got to live through it for another 6 weeks. Yeah,
do it differently. Show your fans, show your players that you care, because at this point you're making a big mistake. And look, to me, it should be obvious. It is nothing personal. Matt Eberflus is a likable guy. I personally don't need Matt Eberflus fired, but I think this team does, this fan base does. Anybody else who is coming to the Bears in the future, they need to know that the Bears are doing things differently. And that would be, unfortunately, he's the one that has to take the hit for a lot of mistakes of the past.
And let me tack onto this, because that 4th and 4 sequence that we just recapped was a result of Caleb Williams not wanting to use a timeout in the chaos, because the Bears had already squandered a timeout challenging a play on a big reception to Jordan Addison that they didn't
Great
deserve
point.
to be challenging. And they wasted a timeout early in the second half, and they didn't want to be down 2 timeouts, 3.5 minutes into the third quarter. And so these are the types of things that compound, and the mess that they create, and then the stuff that you have to try to clean up all day long. Grote, there were things in big moments. And oh, by the way, guess what? The Bears won the coin flip in overtime. And I think everybody, with the momentum they had finishing regulation, thought, okay, they're going to go win this football game. Even when Caleb Williams makes a huge mistake and gets sacked, big mistake, huge mistake, 12-yard loss on second down, holding the ball for more than 9 seconds in the pocket, they still flipped the field with a punt. And this defense that's supposed to be one of the best in the NFL once again failed, right, with the game on the line. And you tack that onto what happened in previous weeks and earlier in the season, and back to last year in Cleveland and Detroit and against Denver. Like, this defense is not responding to moments the way it needs to respond to one. And that was a pretty poor effort on the Vikings game-winning drive. I don't know what the final numbers on it. I'm getting it right now. 10 plays, 68 yards, 529. They just took the game by the you-know-what and drove down the field and kicked an easy field goal from the middle of the field, 29 yards, gimme, chip shot, game over.
Some of their clutch throws where inexcusable moments. TJ Hawkinson, that 34-yard play was that was a soul crusher on that one. We talked about the 69-yard play to Jordan Addison. I'm just going through some of this.
How about this one? How about another soul crusher? How about Nick Mullins coming in for one snap when Sam Darnold is hurt and facing a 3rd and 13, and you go, are they really going to throw it here? And then they just throw a little underneath route. I think it was to Aaron Jones, and he turns 3rd and 13 into a 14-yard gain, and they move the chains, and they continue a scoring drive that then makes the score 27-16. It's their last score of regulation, gave them that 2-score cushion that they needed to get to give themselves some breathing room. And you just go, man, that can't happen. If you're a great defense, you don't let that happen.
Yeah. And the other bad, Cairo Santos had another kick blocked, a 48-yarder. Unbelievable. It looked similar. I have to still zero in on it a little bit further. It looked similar in style to the last one where some guys came up on Matt Pryor. I did talk to Matt Pryor after the game. Let's play that really quickly here. Matt, you know what? I don't have Matt Pryor, but Pryor said that it was different from the previous weeks, that it wasn't the same. Nonetheless, that did happen. DeAndre Carter was the one that I want to hear from here right now.
Oh boy.
He muffs the punt that leads directly to an Aaron Jones touchdown that made it 24-10. Just a horrible moment right there. Let's hear what DeAndre Carter had to say in the locker room after that moment, Dan.
Are you able to explain what did happen on the missed punt, technically with you?
Yeah, I was trying to call Peter, just didn't get out the way of the ball. Ball took a bounce and hit me. Yeah.
Has that happened to you before? Is that something the punt returners kind of get stuck in between kind of thing, or is it? Did it take you by surprise?
It's possible. It's obviously a possibility, but it's unacceptable. You gotta. I'm a pro, been in this league for a long time, man. Been back there a lot of times. Just got to make the Peter Con get away from the ball.
When you go back to the sideline, then are you just kind of praying and hoping that they don't do anything with it, that Minnesota doesn't do anything with it to take advantage of it?
Yeah, obviously you're hoping that that we get the ball back or get a stop or something. But that's on me. I put the defense in a bad situation. They get the ball on the 10-yard line. You can't expect them to hold up. So again, that's on me.
Just another play, Dan. There's so many plays that we could rank number one as soul crusher. That one is competing for number one as well, along with some of the other stuff that we talked about.
Right, and I'll use DeAndre Carter's own chosen word for that. Unacceptable. This is a veteran returner who's been around the block and knows what needs to happen in that moment, and he knows so well that he's telling everybody else on the team to get away from the ball. The Peter call is a poison call. It means, hey, get as far away from this as you can. And for whatever reason, it's like some gravitational force pushed him in the line of the bounce of that punt so that it could be turned over to the Vikings. And you just go, my God, this type of stuff cannot happen. It's unacceptable. It can't happen. So you've got that. You've got the blocked field goal. You got the 4th and 4. You got the overtime drive where they decided not to defend anybody. And you've got a 3-phase breakdown in a game you lost by 3 points at home to a good team. And everybody will say, hey, it's a thin line between, the top of the NFC North and the bottom of the NFC North. Well, the Vikings and the Bears are a tremendous example of that. A well-coached football team is 9-2. A poorly coached, poorly executing football team is 4-7. Good luck sorting through that five-game gap in the standings to figure out a different conclusion other than something needs to change at Haugh. That's why we're here still kind of talking about the same things. Again, 42 days and counting since the last time that they won a football game. It's going to get to at least 46 on Thursday, and I don't think it's going to end on Thursday afternoon.
Oh, man. I want to hear from DJ Moore right now. You and I were both in the scrum with DJ Moore, and I almost feel like we could probably pull the tape from the Green Bay game and just play that back in some of DJ Moore's comments. But here is DJ Moore summing up the game and the day and the year pretty well.
Yeah, you definitely think it's something special is about to happen. And when we got that and we went to overtime, you just was like, dang, we about to win this game. And then they don't come out that way, and you back here asking me why we losing again.
I know that we've asked you similar questions, but do you guys kind of shake your heads with all the different ways that you guys have been losing this year, whether Hail Mary or block kicks, and now this?
Because we losing in almost the most unreal, situations. It's like, all right, now it's like the luck got to go in our favor at some point. So hopefully it's starting on Thanksgiving and can have a nice meal coming back.
Your losses at least make you guys feel like you're better than your record, better than a 5-game losing streak?
Yes, because it's like the most unironic ways to lose a game. Like, you lose on a Hail Mary tip and then stuff like that. It's like we just wasn't doing the right things to win at that moment.
Yeah, when I hear that too, now hearing that again, and and kind of a similar line of questions last week about how many hits can you guys take with these losses? I wonder if, and I'll ask you the question, I wonder if last week was it. Like when they lose to Green Bay the way they did, like I wonder if they have taken their maximum amount of hits, and they know they're not stupid. They know that it would be miraculous for them to get into the playoffs at this point. I wonder if we've already gone one game too many for this team, just with some of the play, especially to your point on that final drive. It was just like they were cooked.
I would say yes to that, except for the way that they attacked those final 2 minutes of the football game today. To be able to rally for 2 scores, to recover an onside kick, to show sort of that kind of grit and tenacity in a moment where they had all odds stacked against them. It showed me that the team hasn't completely folded its tent. But this is 5 in a row now, and I don't know how. Again, this short turnaround is the worst thing for them, because I don't know how they get up and play a functional football game on Thursday against that opponent. Now, that said, if you want to take the optimistic lens to things, you see what Caleb Williams did today, and you heard how you and I talked on Thursday in our preview podcast about all the challenges they were going to face against this Brian Flores defense, and all the pre-snap, deception they were going to encounter, and all the post-snap looks that he was going to have to decipher, and all the things he was going to have to do with hot routes and checks and alerts and everything to put them in position to succeed. To see the game he had today, I mean, we're not just talking about, 340 passing yards and 2 touchdowns today. There were high-level throws throughout the game. The one to DJ to set up the game-tying field goal. I mean, my God, what a missile that was. A layered football over the middle. And it's like, it's superstar stuff. The throw to DeAndre Swift down the right sideline in the first quarter, that's superstar stuff. And Caleb, to his own admission, says, look, I blew the numbers count on that play.
Yeah.
I had Andrew Van Ginkel unaccounted for, and he comes at me on a free runner, and what does he do? He just uses his athleticism, gets outside, extends the play, and then because he knows the route concepts on the play, and then he's got 2 guys clearing out deep, he's able to throw this sort of feathery ball up the right sideline. And the amount of concentration that takes from DeAndre Swift with that ball floating like that, to not feel like you're going to get blown up by an incoming safety, is ridiculous. But that goes for a 30-yard gain 2 snaps after he hits Keenan Allen for 40, and you go, my goodness, this is what Chicago has waited, generations to have, a quarterback who can do these things on a regular basis, and Caleb's doing them. And so maybe they go in and they get another encouraging performance against the Lions on Thursday, but it's like so hard to juggle these flashes against the despair of these just jaw-dropping losses.
Well, to make it easier, Dan, this is where we are now. I mean, again, 4-7. It is about Caleb Williams, as if it wasn't before. I mean, when the season started, it was about winning and getting to the postseason because of the talent that exists on this roster. Now it's 100% about Caleb Williams, and he was terrific. The best guy in the locker room talking about Caleb Williams today was Cole Kmet. This was great. His reaction will probably surprise you a little bit about specifically the 40-yarder and the 30-yarder, the Keenan Allen and DeAndre Swift. Here's Cole Kmet on Caleb Williams in the locker room after the Bears loss.
Caleb had some of his best throws in this game, especially early, the back-to-backs that he made.
Yeah, I'd say some of those are a little risky if you're asking me. But
first one, right, where he drops it in the bucket.
Yeah, the drop in the bucket, I think the one to Keenan. I mean, but he put that on a thread, so again, there's no good defense for the perfect throw. So, yeah, there was some of those that were pretty. I mean, the one at the end of the game is just really unbelievable. Yeah, it just really shows off the arm talent that he has, and I think everyone, them included, kind of knows where the ball should be going in that scenario, and to be able to layer the ball like that and fit in that window, get to DJ, and just kind of execute that scenario, really impressive and. Obviously something I haven't seen here. So that's all. Those are all the positives, but obviously the result is that's the thing that we need to change here.
Yeah, I love that. That
obviously something I haven't seen here yet.
Yes, yeah, obviously something that needs to change the losing. So that's pretty direct stuff. And I thought it was interesting too, talking about the risk-taking of the 40-yarder to Keenan Allen, because there were defenders all over the place. I mean, you could watch it, I mean, especially from our vantage point in the press box. You see this circle of defenders, and there's only one place where you could put the football. But here's the thing, that is what at times has been lacking this year from Caleb Williams, because they, I think, drilled, especially when Waldron was here, drilled it into his head. Don't worry, we're going to let the playmakers make their plays. Your job is to not turn the ball over. So, I mean, and a lot of people were saying similar things. And there was that in this game. Like, Caleb Williams was playing freely. He was flinging the football. Like, I did feel good about, like, I thought he was going to make that play to DJ Moore, that 27-yard. Just judging from his body language and the way he was playing, he did seem to play more freely in this game. And we'll see if that continues over the next several games.
Well, you and I talked on Friday on WSCR about Thomas Brown unlocking a fearless mindset, I think, in the offense, and the way that Thomas Brown messaged things about not playing fear-filled football, and being able to attack and play free. You see Caleb responding to that, and that's a really big deal right now at this stage of his development, because this isn't just a guy, as you said, who's risk-averse and trying to do everything he can to not turn the football over. He's making plays left and right for you, and he's doing so in ways where he is playing free and fearless. And it's really impressive to hear guys, Caleb included, on the offense just talk about what Thomas Brown has done in 2 weeks' time to get their attention and to get their best, right? And you're starting to see those things come together. That's something we've got to keep an eye on here over the next several weeks to see what direction that goes in, because it I don't know how it complicates the discussion, but it certainly factors into the discussion on where you're going from here.
Sure.
And it's been really cool to see that. And I think that there is something to having a coach who tells you, don't be afraid, like, do your stuff, and to see the Bears attack this Vikings defense and contrast that to how we saw the Bears approach this with Luke Getsy and Justin Fields a year ago in 2 games against the Vikings. And Tyson Bagent obviously came into one of those games. Night and day in terms of what we see from the offensive approach and how efficient and decisive and quick everything was in combating the things the Vikings threw at them.
Let's hear from Caleb on that. It was a question that you asked, actually, and it was essentially about overcoming this, not completely, obviously, but overcoming this vaunted Vikings defense, which we were all sort of obsessed with throughout the week. Here's Caleb Williams on that.
They're a great defense. They're number one in turnovers and all these different, categories. And so I think the biggest thing was being able to be decisive, having answers, whether it was alerts or hot routes or, making a few checks. And obviously sometimes with those, they'll get you. Sometimes being incomplete. Sometimes, you'll make a check and they'll make their checks, and you just have to live with it. And then from there, you go out there and they make a play, you make a play, and it goes back and forth with a defense like that. So you just got to stay in the game. Keep your stay right there, level-headed, and from there it's going to come down to the end of the game, which we knew it was.
Yeah, and I think Caleb probably had enough of hearing about the Vikings defense throughout the week. I was super impressed with him right from the beginning. I mean, my prediction coming into this game, I actually predicted the Bears would win this game, but I also thought that he was going to struggle mightily for the first few series, and he didn't. So I'll give a thumbs up, Dan. I mean, we got to give a few thumbs up here and there. Offensive line held together pretty well today. There were a lot of times where, especially from the beginning, I mean, they knew what was going, and cheers to the offense and the coaches knowing what might be coming and finding their blind spots. Tevin Jenkins held up throughout the whole game. So the offensive line, I thought, did a pretty good job of protecting Caleb Williams today.
There's 3 sacks on the ledger. One of them is the 12-yarder where Caleb had the football for 9 seconds. Can't blame that on the offensive line. Another one's where Caleb tucked and ran and scrambled for 0 yards. It goes in the official stat sheet as a sack. Yeah. And so you see that on a day where you're expecting maybe there's going to be 4 or 5, 6 if they're not, really, really sharp with their protection plan. They did a nice job, and they put together a good game plan. And your DJ after the game also talk about how he sees Caleb having his confidence through the roof right now. Those were DJ's words, and saying that he's got these game plans down, and he's understanding what's being asked of him. And Caleb said that he's very sort of energized by the fact that Thomas Brown knows what he wants, and that he as a quarterback knows what his offensive coordinator wants. And they're rolling right now. And so you got to figure out a way to squeeze some positivity out of it. It's just hard, man. Like, it's like the NFL is a cruel, cruel league, and you don't really have a chance to even let the despair of today wash over you, because you are like basically going into a walkthrough practice on Tuesday morning at Alice Hall for the Lions game. And then you're going to do like a walkthrough red zone day on Wednesday. And then you're gonna have to go play a football game on Thursday early, right? It's not Thursday night. Yeah. It's Thursday at 11:30 Central. Like, so good luck with all that, in the words of Jerry Seinfeld.
It's going to be a tough week for everybody, but that's what it is. Dan and I will definitely be at Hallis Hall Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and figuring out good times to record the podcast. So another crazy loss for the Bears. Dan, anything else that you want to add before we get out of here and on to the next here?
Got one little footnote for you. My son, 11 years old, 6th grade, 3rd game in his life at Soldier Field today. The previous 2 games he was here, 2019, the Bears lose when Eddie Piñeiro's field goal kick goes wide left on the final play. 2021, he comes to see the Bears play the Ravens, and the Ravens with Tyler Huntley overcome a late Andy Dalton go-ahead touchdown pass to lead their own game-winning drive in the final minute. So young Ryan Wiederer has experienced some Soldier Field heartbreaks. 0 for 3 here in this building for him, and those aren't 3 losses. Those are 3, like, check yourself in the mirror and figure out what you want to do with your life losses.
That's trauma that never. How old is Ryan Wiederer?
11.
Oh my God, Ryan, look at me. I'm sorry. Be strong, man. When I was 11 years old, I had crying moments, like when the Cubs blew it in 1984. I mean, that is trauma. I hope you're staying strong, Ryan.
Grote, how old were you for that one? The 1984 NLCS?
I was either 11 or 12. Yeah.
So I would have been 7, and I still refer to it as the Goodwill Hunting talk, because my dad had to walk me around the neighborhood telling me it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. In tears after that. So I remember that one vividly, and the scars are still there, 40 years later.
That's hilarious. My brother and I, after that, took a walk and to a local park, and just to get out of the house, like, brought the basketball, and there were some of our other friends too, a little 12, 13-year-old friends who came to the park too, because they were so distraught. So it was like this terrible, traumatic moment, and we all sort of worked through it together in group therapy. So I hope Ryan I know he's got a supportive dad who will take care of him and explain to him that it's not your fault, Ryan. It's not your fault.
Either I'll explain it to him, or I'll put him here on the pod in the next couple of days, and we'll just grill him on what his emotions were.
Does our producer, Adam Stasinski, know it's not his fault? Because he takes this stuff pretty seriously. Are you doing okay? This is just a wellness check for you, Studzinski. Are you okay, buddy?
Studs, pop on here.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're immune. You've got some immunity going. You got the shot, huh?
Looks like acceptance to me. This is like a big dose of acceptance.
Yeah. You kidding me? Oh, this is nothing. The Bears lost the Super Bowl when I was 16 years old. This is nothing. This is nothing.
You were 16-year-old studs that you're. How did a 16-year-old studs react when Devin Hester takes that first kick in for a touchdown? You must have just lost your prepubescent voice.
That's when my voice changed. Yeah. There's a lot of excitement. Yeah, a lot of excitement. No, and then the next day, the worst part about that was actually the next day, my first hour class had a Colts fan in it. So I had to sit there while this person's like basking in the glory of winning the Super Bowl. I'm just like head down on my desk, like so. Yeah. This is nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, we've all had better trauma in our lives, but this does suck for the Bears' sake. 5 straight losses, 4-7. The Bears will be at Detroit on Thursday, 11:30 Chicago time, 12:30 Detroit time. If you happen to be going to the game, we appreciate you guys listening and liking and supporting and commenting. It all means a lot to us here on the Take the North podcast. And for Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune and frequent score contributor and our executive producer, Adam Studzinski, I am Mark Grote. Thanks for listening and watching the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.